Hi, I'm William from the University of Chicago, and in this video I'll be talking about the paper by Markowetz in 2015, 5 Selfish Reasons to Work Reproducibly, which we discussed at one of our Reproducibility Journal Club meetings. There were 2 reasons for picking this paper. One is that reproducibility is obviously very important for our discussions in science and trying to improve science, but secondly, a lot of those papers that discuss meta-science and open science often criticize the process of science, and it can be a bit depressing finding out everything that is wrong with the current science process. This paper, however, is a little bit more positive and upbeat because it provides reasons for why working reproducibly benefits you, the researcher. So let's get started. The first thing we'll talk about is what actually is reproducibility. So here I've defined it as reproducibility is recreating the same finding given the same data. Now, Goodman et al. Categorizes reproducibility in 3 different ways. The first one, methods reproducibility, which is providing enough details about the study procedures and data so that the same procedures can be exactly repeated. The second thing, the results reproducibility, which is obtaining the same results from conducting an independent study as closely matched to the original experiment, and that's also known as replicability. And then lastly, inferential reproducibility, which is drawing the same conclusions from a reanalysis or replication of the original study. All 3 are incredibly important in science. However, currently in science there's a reproducibility crisis. So taking out a prominent example, in the reproducibility project Psychology, which was an attempt to replicate 100 findings that had been previously published in psychology journals, only 36% of the replications were successful, which is a very low number. And of those successful replications, the majority had a smaller effect size than what was reported in those papers. So that's a very low number, that's concerning. Another thing, a survey of 1,500 scientists, so this is across all different fields, not just psychology, found 70% had failed to reproduce others' experiments. So we have a problem being able to reproduce our findings. In that same survey of those 1,500 scientists, there are a few factors that were chosen or that most scientists agree contribute to the irreproducibility of research. Some of that includes low statistical power or poor analysis, which I've discussed in previous videos and of other papers. But I've highlighted here methods and code unavailable. So one issue is that other scientists cannot reach the experimental methods or the code, or cannot run the experimental methods or code to recreate the experiment or replicate the experiment. And that's a large barrier to reproducibility. So it's often talked about when we talk about reproducibility and trying to improve it across science that we do it for someone else. So the thinking is, can someone else access my data and make sense of my analyses? And can someone else run my experimental code and replicate my experiment to show that my finding is reliable and that my research is rigorous? However, this paper that I'm about to discuss, Markowetz, takes a different twist on it. We can do reproducibility for ourselves, or for yourself, the researcher. There are many benefits to incorporating reproducibility into your own workflow. And so Markowetz picks out 5 reasons. They aren't the only reasons, and they aren't totally the best reasons in my opinion, but it's a different viewpoint on how we should approach reproducibility. So reason number 1 is avoiding embarrassing disaster. So making sure that your analyses are reproducible to yourself allows your co-authors to check you didn't mess up. So for example, avoiding incorrect labeling of data in Excel is a typical common error that you see. So a point to make is that this will save you time later, because if you need to go back and check what your analyses are, the more reproducible it is, the easier it is to double check. And I think the critical point from this part of the Markowetz paper is that science is not just the end result. It's not just the paper at the end of the day. Science is also everything that led up to the paper, starting from experimental design to the actual data collection and data analysis and the paper itself. Reason number two to work reproducibly is it's easier to write papers. So having a dynamic document that updates your figures and numbers, I've given an example of R Markdown, but you can do this with other programs, will give you more confidence in those figures and numbers. A lot of us researchers have the experience of having to go back to our statistical analyses to make sure the numbers we've written in to our manuscripts, to our Word documents, are correct. And sometimes we make typos and we have the wrong p-value, for example. Making it dynamic so that as it runs the analyses in R and then automatically writes them into your Markdown document and then later your Word or PDF document will give you more confidence that those numbers are correct. So you don't need to double check those numbers over and over. So it will save you time in the long run and make sure and gives you confidence in what the numbers are. Reason number three, it convinces reviewers, firstly, that you've had incorporated rigor into your research and into your analyses, but it also helps when the reviewers can access your data and reproduce your analyses. And they may even try out their own analyses or visualizations of your data, leading to more constructive reviews. And that's how the review process should be, to try and improve your manuscript. Reason number four, it enables continuity of your work. It's easier to pick up where you left off if you've incorporated reproducibility into your work. The person that is going to look at your project the most is you. And there are times where you might have to go away from your project. For example, if you have submitted your manuscript and you're waiting for the reviews, the review process can take up to 2, 3, 6 months. So you might have to pick up when the reviewer eventually asks for more analyses or confirmation about certain numbers or certain results. You'd have to go back and pick up the project. And if you've made it reproducible, that should be easier. You can understand, for example, if you've left comments in your data or your code, you understand exactly what that code does or what exactly that data is. And that means you can pick up where you left off in a much smoother way. Lastly, reason number 5, it builds your reputation. So having your data reproducible for others, as well as will signal and build reputation for you as being honest and careful, making sure your research is transparent. And another side effect is that if you have your data set open or your code open, other researchers can cite that and can use your code to hopefully continue your research or continue your line of research. So to summarize, working reproducibly entails a couple of things. Firstly, that science is not just the result. It's being able to reproduce the work from start to finish, from designing the experiment to the results. And once you understand that, you'll understand that there are many benefits to reproducibility and transparency. You will save time, especially in the long run, and there's less chance of you making mistakes. So the benefits of reproducibility and transparency is not just for science as a whole and as for others to try and reproduce your work, but it's also for yourselves to make your research workflow efficient and rigorous. And another thing is that you can be a leader in this recent movement of reproducibility, and you can set the culture of reproducibility. So that was that paper. I encourage you to read it, and I hope you like this video.